All right, we're live. Welcome to the Expansion Chamber, episode 4. Today I'm joined by Nightwood Guns and Pete of TFN 15. Brett, you want to introduce yourself to the people?
Yep, Brett, Nightwood Guns on YouTube and Instagram, mostly YouTube, and an author.
All right, and Pete, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. TFN15 on YouTube and TFN.15 on Instagram. Basically, I'm a professional LARPer, and actually, I'm going to provide a little more value-added content to the channel pretty soon. I'm just putting some new direction out there, so can't wait to get it out for you guys.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about what's news in the firearms community, and that is the doxing of administrative results. If you don't know who he is, he's a YouTuber, meme creator, all that sort of stuff. Let's see here. There we go. So this is his website, but his whole thing is he wears the balaclava. He doesn't reveal his identity. Well, some communist dude on Twitter doxed him, said where he lived, his church, his family, all that, who his real name is, all this stuff.
Literally a communist, by the way.
Literally a communist. It was basically triggered because admin basically jokes about killing communists. So, let's bring back McCarthy from the grave. And what's your guys' thoughts?
I mean, you know what, man? I just want to stop for one quick second and say I stand with admin results, and I think I'm going to dox myself for the first time here on this show ever. It's time. Here we go. Hello, everyone. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's the Talking Balaclava, aka the man who eats baklava. What's going on, boys?
What's going on?
Nah, man. You know what? Well, I'll tell you what. I'm just fucking around today with this, but I do stand with him. It really upset me, the whole incident with him being doxxed out there. Some people want to have some relative anonymity, and then what do you say? Well, why would you put yourself out there on YouTube and all that sort of stuff? Information is out there. People can, dox you. I don't know. There's a lot of different reasons for that. I'm gonna, everyone knows me from my old channel anyway. It's not like I'm not new, but right now I'm just trying to keep it a little more low key until there's a little bit of a shift in my career. And because I work in an industry that doesn't approve of what we talk about. So I still want to be out here, but I have to keep it a little bit more low key until it's time to, do whatever. But with admin, it went a step further than him. This dude went and posted pictures of his wife who were, is connected somewhere to that, and posted pictures of him where he doxed him, doxed him, where everyone's been waiting for his face reveal for the longest time. But to take it a step further, the guy doxed his wife, man. And that right there, dead ass, if you dox my family, I'm coming for you. I'm going to find out who you are. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to want to anyway. I don't know what I'll be able to do, but he is a connected guy. Obviously, admin comes from the police community. People can take a simple IP and find out all your information, right? So to me, I took it really personally, and I was like upset because I've had death threats. Brett, I know you've had death threats online. I'm sure you've had a couple now, Midas,
Oh, I've had them. So I've had them back in the day from before I even did YouTube videos.
Yeah. So. And I did some gun stuff prior, but I was mainly in the airsoft community. So I just figured, okay, we're, pretty autistic, and that was enough. You know what I mean? Like that our community as an airsoft community is pretty autistic. But no, man, it's also in any community, especially now in the gun community, since things are kind of getting so glamorous and big, right? So bottom line is, man, that communist guy took it a step way too far, going after the family. That's just my opinion. So
yeah, that's what they do. I mean, it's, and not just commies, but anybody who wants to dox anybody. There's no line. If you cross the line of I'm going to dox this person, you have no moral values whatsoever, and you're willing to dox even up to their children. Now, when I started my YouTube channel, I made the choice to just sign my name to everything that I said, kind of Ron Swanson style from Parks and Rec. It's like, yeah, if I'm going to say something, I'm going to put my name on it. So I can't be doxxed. But also, I don't work in an industry where like I could be doxxed and I would like lose my livelihood and my job. I've definitely had death threats, and obviously people know my name and they know the approximate area of where I live. If they want, they can fuck around and find out. I'd prefer for everybody if they didn't, but if they do, then that's the whole point of the Second Amendment. But I definitely appreciate people that have created a life in an industry where it's like, hey, if you say that you want to kill commies, you're going to get fired or you're going to get in trouble, or maybe even people in your church will look down on you for saying, it's like, oh yeah, we need to kill commies. And like, well, let's not kill anybody. It just can kind of completely mess with you. And I think that people who dox other people need to be prosecuted in some way. And that just doesn't really seem to happen. It seems like people get away with this.
Twitter terms of service is just not enough. And I've not been doxxed in that way, like that admin got doxxed, but the death threats and stuff, some of the stuff that they were doing hit pretty close to home for me. And that's why I then shifted, like, in this argument, like, who should have a gun, right? Like, that kind of came out of this because so many people were posting like, don't arm your enemies, and so then my emotional response versus my logical response were really tearing at me for over the last 24 hours, which I definitely want to get into today because I think like the Second Amendment is for everyone. I am one of those guys. Yes, I am. And Lucas did something really great online of T-Rex Arms talking about that over the last 24 hours. But so I kind of like had to adjust my emotional standpoint on it, which is like, fuck those guys, and I'm not saying that if we have differing viewpoints, you shouldn't be armed. What I'm saying is like when you're threatening the lives of family members of people that are online, yeah, I'd prefer that they wouldn't have a gun. You know what I mean? I'd prefer it, but I'm prepared for any alternative,
This is the thing, ultimately, is there's
By the way, I'm gonna stop the cam because this thing is, I don't know how he does this. This thing is so freaking hot. Hold on. I gotta take this off. Sorry,
guys. It's Peter Weller in the RoboCop suit. You're just like, man, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. How did you do this?
Dude, it's freaking hot. Oh my god, I'm so glad it's off now.
No, but the thing is, ultimately, there's no way to keep communists or terrorists or anyone from having firearms unless we do things that are inherently unconstitutional and violate the principles that we're espousing, right? And this is the thing, right? So I have videos, not trying to promote obviously you're on my own channel if you're watching this. Plenty of my videos are training videos, right? They're educational videos. It's more than just here's this gun I don't like or here's this product I like. And, you could argue that if I just make a video about a product or a video about, another product or a philosophy to airsoft or whatever, or politics, it doesn't really give a whole lot of benefit. But let's say someone who wants to do harm could watch any of these videos I have on training and could use them for, ill reasons, just like anyone could get a firearm and use them for ill reasons. But ultimately, I'm producing the content for anyone who's out there willing to go find it. I'm now hoping it's going to be people who want to learn, who want to train, just like I'm hoping the majority of people who go out to buy a firearm are doing it out of good moral values and aren't doing it because they want to hurt people. I can't control that, and I don't think anyone should, because ultimately it falls on each of us to have the highest level of training, the best firearms that we can get possible, right? It's the whole argument of like, oh, well, you need, gun-free zones. How do we fix the problem? How do we fix mass shootings? You protect yourself, right? So if a mass shooting happens, just like in the prior episodes we've talked about, you're trained, and so you can draw that firearm or do whatever you need to do. You're situationally aware, right? Because all these things happen when you present the opportunity to be a victim. I'd say 9 times out of 10. And if you're not presenting yourself with the opportunity to be a victim, or at least you have these skills and abilities to get yourself out of that victim situation, it'll probably be all right. But it's the people who go about life completely clueless of what's going on, not paying attention to anyone around them, bumping into people in the street because they're looking at their phones. Those are the people that ultimately end up being victims. And then those people ultimately end up complaining about guns and stuff like that. Well, yeah, you let yourself be that. Now, that's not really a discussion for today. I kind of went down on a tangent. But, the gun community as a whole is not just people on one side of the political aisle. It's very much people on all different sides. But at the same time, it being a topic of the show, kind of breaking that down real fast, I don't think we have a community. I think we just have a bunch of people who own guns, and there's a community, and then people who own guns. I think it's two separate things.
I think that we have, too many communities within the gun community, and there's just infighting between all of them. I think that's pretty common when you have any large community like that. Is it's just kind of fractured, and that even goes from you have the extreme leftists, and you have communists, and you also have even though they're blown out of proportion, it's like the same numbers as the communist people, far right extremists. It's like I'm talking going completely all out Nazis, right? Because those neo-Nazis do exist. There's just not nearly as many as they claim. It's like the same numbers as the communists. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly not as many as there are now, like people who identify with Antifa, and BLM, which are communist organizations.
It's just getting numbers to show up, right? Because you look at like Antifa and like riots on that left side, they can get so many people to show up. Granted, they're handing out cash at those events, but they can get a lot of people to show up for those and throw bricks through windows. But Nazis show up somewhere and they are completely run out of town. And I just think that no matter who you are, everybody has a Second Amendment right to own a firearm. I don't care what your political leanings are.
Yeah.
Let's just try to keep America free. I would hope that that's something that most people, enough people to have a majority in this country, could agree on. But beyond that, just arm yourself and protect yourself and yours. It's a free country. You can believe whatever you want.
Well, I think we were just such a toxic community. And this is the thing, right? I put a video out saying, hey, I don't like this SIG product, right? And this is about a company. And the mentality of the right and the left is, big companies bad, right? A lot of times, don't trust the big companies, make them earn your trust stuff. But yet in the firearms community, people will just like hop right in the lap of these big companies of SIG, Glock, Smith & Wesson, Kimber, whatever.
Because it's an emotional investment. Right. It's what they identify that product with. So, I run Glocks. That's just what I run. That's it. That's what I prefer. I have a SIG, but I run Glocks, right? So that's what works for me. But I will tell you that you have this sort of like an ego and emotional investment into the object that you're training with, because in your mind, the entire time that you're training, you're thinking, okay, this thing is going to save my life and I'm going to be the hero in my own story one day, right? Like, maybe thinking those exact words, but really the truth is like, hey, I'm going to come out alive. I'm going to come out on top. And you want to believe that this is Excalibur. This is the sword that's going to help me slay the dragon, right? And that comes with a lot of ego, a lot of emotion invested. And so when you could show someone proof that cognitive dissonance that's going on in multiple ways in society we're not immune to it in the gun community. It's the same thing here as it is anywhere else. It's just a matter of that we're talking about life-taking and life-saving tools, and people get really hot under the collar about it because they've invested money, time, training, hopefully effort into it, right? But more so, we're seeing people who are investing their emotions into it.
But not their training is the issue. I think a lot of people don't train with their products, and so they have emotional investment because they think it looks cool. I think the GBRS belt is a good example of this. A lot of people hopped right on that bandwagon when that thing came out. Awful. And if you think about it for 5 seconds, it doesn't do anything very well. If you look at like actual reviews, it's like very annoying to like work with in size. The stupid inverted Velcro thing, and of course all the crap about GBRS, a company that sells fake plates. But there's so much emotional investment I've seen with people for that belt. It's like, no, this belt's amazing. It's fantastic. Same with the Faro belt. That thing to me is total dog crap.
Yep.
Brett, I know you're not big into like battle belts and duty belts and stuff, but obviously the Tigris material, right?
Yeah.
So the Faro belt uses a Tigris material as a stiffener, but a lot of, let me grab one.
Yeah. I know where he's going with this. It's like, it's just the idea that this thing is the next greatest thing, and it just you're buying into someone's marketing is essentially it.
Yeah. And so like this, you have this material, this like thermoplastic material. You can kind of see it.
Right. Yeah.
It almost looks like carbon fiber. So like on this belt, this is from a tack pack. When you weave your molly through here, it attaches onto that thermoplastic. But a lot of these companies that use this product use it because it's a hype product, and then it doesn't actually aid in design. But you have these people with such strong emotional investments because they have the hype material. Tigris is now the hype material for things, and it actually has a lot of disadvantages. in terms of where. But same with like the SIG, right? I make a video on the macro saying, hey, these are my problems. And the first video I made on the macro saying I have problems, I was still very much pro macro. I still like the gun. I was just like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm having these rust issues. It's a little bit unusual to me. And that was basically that first video I made. And it got like, I think it got like 26,000 views. And a lot of people saying, you're not maintaining, you're not doing it right. So I started cleaning it more. I started maintaining it more than I would any other gun. And then I reached 2,000 rounds, like 6 months of carrying it or whatever, and it's still in terrible condition. And then I've decided, you know what, I'm it's just not doing it for me. I strip it down to clean it. I show you guys the issues it has internally. Pete bullies me into making a video, and then here we are, almost 100,000 views later. But the point is,
I've never been happier about bullying you about anything, so I don't care.
The point is, I'm just one dude with my experience, and people lost their minds, right? And then
Yeah.
it's not just, I'm not just trying to make it about me. This is just an experience I can relate to. But Brett, when I sent him my macro, let him do videos on it and stuff, same reaction from people, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just, I think that it's just such a perfect example of such a hype product that is, people are just bending the knee to defend for just no reason. And a company that people just want to defend. And I don't know if it's because the military contracts, I don't know what it is, but there's a physical flaw within the thought process of the majority of gun owners, where you don't think about a product based on its merits. You think about it based on who runs it, what special operator team uses it, right? Oh, well, the super elite operator team uses the Glock 19, so I'm going to use it instead of a Glock 17, even though that makes no sense. Like, there's all sorts of dumb things people do. Or it's like, oh, I saw this cop runs this duty belt setup. Well, who gives a shit? Like, just make your own, right?
Because there's so few base level principles established in our community as well. What may work for GBRS group, who are former DevGru operators, may not work for a police officer. And what may work for the police officer may not work for the concealed carry civilian. And so, there aren't like there are principles across the board that apply, right? There are certain things about guns and the principles about guns that apply. Like before the show and the pre-show, we were all talking about concealment percentage, which is a concept over on Armed and Styled, who we had mentioned on the show prior. And those are general principalities that you can apply scientifically across the board. But we're talking about so many very different uses, so many very different cases. So I feel personally, it becomes an identity thing. What do you want to identify as? Am I an HK guy, or am I a Glock guy, or am I a SIG guy? Because SIG is all about the progression of guns right now.
Never settle.
You never settle. And GBRS Mike Glover walking through a room with a gun at their waist. Like it's whatever it is, right? Like and by the way, I'm not hating on that stuff. That stuff really amazed me when I first saw it. Like, I loved their marketing scheme. And then after a while, I was like, oh, that's just what it is. It's a marketing scheme. And then the principles are stuff that I learned in classes by like guys like Shrek McPhee, like, who was teaching the same principles, just use the different words. And now progress is just upgrading the terminology, you know what I mean? But teaching some of the same old stuff. Regardless, people get emotionally involved. They go, no, man, DevGru guys, they're the best in the fucking world. And it's like being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, right? Or a KC fan.
The Eagles are better than the Eagles.
Exactly. And you just invest your time in a team your whole life. That's why people are so staunch in everything. The
So
Republican, Democrat, take the Republican Democrat thing, dude. Like, everyone is all about this Republican versus Democrat. They're all screwing us equally down the middle. It doesn't matter. So they're not applying the wide, broad range principality of being an American to their voting process, So yeah, I think that we're lacking that. But even within the gun community, there's anti-gunners. So how can you have like a community that's based around an object, the gun, and the principles behind being an American carrying a gun, let's say, and then you have a lot of the community who are anti-gunners, as a matter of fact.
Well, I think it's as anything becomes more popular, right? I don't know how big into like video games and comics and stuff you are, Pete, but obviously Brett and I are both nerds. And
I know a couple
as
things.
as like any property becomes more like Star Wars, Marvel, anything becomes more norm, the quality of the community and of the property itself degrades, right? Like
Yep.
look at the MCU, look at Star Wars, look at all these things. Now that it's mainstream, it's turned into garbage, right? When video games became more mainstream, there was more garbage pumped out because as soon as it becomes more mainstream, they have to do mainstream appeal. I mean, look at Garand Thumb and his channel.
Demo
As he
Ranch.
became more mainstream, now he's becoming more like Demolition Ranch. Instead of keeping that unique, the reasons I like to watch his videos where they were educational, they had some jokes, but the video wasn't a joke. So nothing against the guy, it's just for me that's not why I was watching him, and so now his videos aren't as applicable to me as a viewer.
Yeah, man.
But he gets more mainstream appeal, and so that's the thing. When anything becomes more mainstream, I think it goes downhill, and I think because guns are becoming more mainstream, I think SIG kind of is feeding into that mainstream market where it's like, oh, we have a model for everyone. We have so many variations, so much customizability, all these things that to a outsider, to someone who has very little experience actually using a firearm, it looks awesome. Oh my God, I can change my grip module. I can go get 10 different slides. I can get it in these different patterns and colors. And it's like, all you need is, grip, sights, and a trigger, and the gun shoots and you aim it, right? It's a lot simpler. But when you can add all these marketing terms and stuff, and SIG is fantastic at marketing, I'll give them that. They know who to pay money to make videos for them. That is when you fracture the community ultimately, because you have people coming in, the normies who are coming into the community, and instead of getting the knowledge from people who have knowledge, instead they're looking for feature set. They're looking for instead of firearms as a tool, they're looking at firearms as a fashion accessory ultimately. And I think the SIG definitely probably plays the role of fashion accessory better. I think there's plenty of brands that do that very well. But Glock, to a lot of people looking in, oh, this looks like a stick of butter with a grip attached to it or something. I think Brett got a comment like that.
Yep, that was a good comment.
Right. But hey, who cares? It shoots pretty damn well and it's easy to work on. Like in reality, this is a great first gun owner's gun because it's a very easy gun to work on. Lots of aftermarket, all this stuff. I'm not trying to shill for Glock here, but Glock has a lot of fans for a reason. SIG's reasons for fans, I think it comes far more from they appeal to the normies coming into the community and being able to make it more of an accessory than a tool.
But also people sorry, go ahead, Brett.
Okay, so first of all, your gun isn't special. I think that's something to really understand here. Is the meme that it's like the bell curve chart, and it's like the guy with like the drooling mouth, and then it's like the screaming guy with glasses, then it's like the Jedi Master. And the Jedi Master and the drooling mouth guy like come to the same conclusion. And it's like, the drooling mouth guy is like, I bought a Glock because that's what was recommended at the gun store. And the Jedi guy is like, I buy a Glock because it's got a grip and a trigger and it always goes bang. And then you have the guy at the bell curve that's like, I get a SIG P320 because it has, the grip modules and it has a compensator built into it. And, it has all this stuff. And that's kind of the thing is SIG has been brilliant in their marketing, and they have now become the go-to gun for someone who doesn't know anything about guns. They walk into a gun store and they want to buy what they think is a nice gun. The name SIG is a quality name in a lot of people's eyes, but the fact of the matter is that like 30 years ago, a SIG P226 is going to be infinitely higher quality than a P320 that is made today. And just SIG has completely changed under, this leadership to now being like, hey, we want to capture all of these people that like don't know what to do. And I think that probably the pandemic was a huge moment when people are like, okay, military contract went to the M17 and M18. I'm going to go and I'm going to buy the military handgun. That was the entire reason for Beretta's success is people are like, oh, it's a military handgun. Boom.
I thought it was Die Hard.
Bruce Willis used it in Die Hard. Exactly. Lethal Weapon. And it's like all of a sudden that people just start going towards it because that's what they do. So SIG landed the military contract because they're selling their guns for like 3 pennies each. And that was a huge marketing thing. So they're going in and they're buying these guns. I'm not saying that SIGs are poor quality. What I'm saying is you look at a P320 today, you look at a 226 from 30 years ago, and you're looking at that they're two completely different ballparks.
I can attest to that as someone who's had both for sure. And dude, that's what I mean. It's just what you identify with. Some people, like if you're in the know, like you actually understand and know that like military, when you hear the words mil spec or military grade,
or law
Um,
enforcement or
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
like that.
That's actually a pejorative for most of us who understand what that means. You know what I mean? Like issue stuff and everything. Like, not that I was in the military, but you know that a lot of issue stuff is crap. And like, so when
Literally the lowest bidder, whatever the lowest bidder was selling, we bought.
Exactly. So when you have a lot of people who hear that, oh, the military just, the United States Army just picked up this M18 as the official sidearm, and everyone's like, oh, well, if it's good enough for the United States Army, the greatest fighting force in the world, it's good enough for me. And really, that's part of the problem when it's like attack of the normies, like you were just saying. They come in, they don't know anything about anything. But granted, that's what got me into the game prior, right? With like Glock, I was like, wow, what is everyone using? And you
So
hear that,
cops use, yeah.
right? Like cops, or like 65% of the world's law enforcement and military is using a Glock, right? That's an actual stat.
And most special forces units still use Glocks.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, it just happened to work out like that. They did fit my hand well. I do shoot them well, so on and so forth. But a lot of people are not going to go into getting multiple guns to try because they want to see how that will help them progress their training, progress their accuracy, progress, like, I'm going to admit that 320, when I had it in my hand, my goodness, like the feeling of it, it was like, like at the gun store, I was like, this is kind of what I've been looking for, like the upgrades in a Glock. But, like I don't have to upgrade anything. I just have to put a dot on it or whatever, right? Like just,
Or it comes with a high quality SIG red dot.
right.
Worry
Right, exactly.
With special
The
Chinese secret.
Yes, very, very tight secrets. But you know what I mean? So like what people again, go back to what people idolize, what people associate with, and you think about that, and that's what gets involved. And then so they base their, you ever see those memes? Guys will base their personalities around one of these four things for the rest of their lives. Well, people do that, and most people will not evolve. I'm sure. I know we talked about this last time, Brett. You went through multiple evolutions in your gun world where you
Oh, yeah.
were carrying small little micros. Now you're carrying a freaking staccato. Every one of us on this program are people who are very cerebral about their carry. Like I told you, I've been watching like Armed and Styled because you recommended it, and like I'm like, yeah, I'll listen to anyone who's got brains who can talk about these concepts more broadly, because I want to progress. I want to evolve. I want to also help the community evolve. But most people aren't that. They're not taking their gun out of their gun safe, maybe once a year.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of now, granted, I'm not generalizing SIG people. I am generalizing people who buy SIGs and then yell at other people on the internet that SIG is better than everything else. Like that's who I'm generalizing here. Like there are so many people that I respect run SIGs, own SIGs, but they're like, dude, yeah, Glocks are great. HKVP9 is great. CZP10 is great. They all go bang. It's just which one do you like? Which company do you want to be associated with? But at the end of the day, they all go bang and they're all reliable. I'm generalizing the people who yell at other people that SIG is better than anything else. And like, I'm sorry, it's not. I mean, it's another striker fire gun. And this striker fire gun just has a lot of controversy around it that other striker fire guns have not had. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? And I think people just need to be able to reflect on that and just detach themselves. Your gun is not special. Your company does not need to be the best. You can have something and enjoy it and let other people enjoy what they like too. I mean, I just dropped like, I don't know what, $800 on this little Shadow System CR920.
Nice.
And I'm not attached to it at all. In fact, this thing is probably going to malfunction. And I'm going to be honest about it, but I buy a lot of guns. I am not the person who walked into a gun store, boom, my first gun is a SIG P320 or a P365 or an X Macro or something. And this is what I chose to spend all of my money on to protect my life with, protect my family with. And because of that, it has to be good. If my bubble is burst and there's something that might be better out there, then my ego can't handle that. So
Yeah.
I think as people who buy a lot of guns, we don't get as emotionally attached to them. It's like, I'm sorry, but my staccato is not, any better functionally. It has a grip, a trigger, and it goes bang, and you can hit people with it. Just like, I don't know, a CZP10. It makes no difference. It's
For
just
sure.
the finer details.
Like I started years ago, I bought a CZP07 because I liked them. I wanted a hammer fired gun. I hear all these things, and then I had it for like a year, and then I got this Glock 19. I've had this thing for forever, And it's like, oh, the Glock just does everything I want it to do very consistently, very easily. I can work on this thing really easily, because the first time I tried to take apart this PO7, I'm like, what is this? I had to watch like 8 videos versus I watched a video of how to take apart a Glock popped up. I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, this is so easy. So now I've just been using Glocks, and I'm sure there's some other brand out there that is going to innovate and do things. Like I'm about to pick up a Shadow Systems as well and try their stuff out. It's basically a Glock with some upgrades. But it's like, who cares? It doesn't really matter, right? Use a staccato, use a Glock, use a high point. It's far more a skill issue. There was someone in the comments of one of my videos, and he was like, oh, I can shoot my Ruger, whatever, like, get 2-inch groups at 35 yards, but I can't even do the same at 15 yards for Glock. And I'm like, okay, it sounds like a user issue. And
yeah,
it was like,
first of all, can you post a video of you doing that with your Ruger?
Yeah.
And then you trying it with your Glock, and we'll probably see that you can't do it with either. So
yes. But like people think that either Glocks aren't accurate. It's like you can't. It's very rare. I know very few people that can outshoot even the most inaccurate handguns than a high point, right? Maybe a high point, but other like a standard striker for a gun, a SIG, a Glock, a CZ, whatever. Most people cannot outshoot them, right? I cannot outshoot this Glock, right? When I went from the standard Gen 3 barrel to now a Gen 5 barrel because I had to upgrade the barrel, I did not notice any difference in accuracy. Okay, well, to be fair, the barrel was so worn out, I actually did. But from when I had the brand new Gen 3 barrel that came with this gun and then the brand new Gen 5 barrel I threw in here, there's no difference. Yes, this has the target rifling super marksman barrel, or, like the agency barrel that, I'm loaning out to you for the comp review that you just did.
Yep.
It's some super match grade barrel. Who notices a difference? No one. No one notices a difference, right?
No way.
Unless you do all your shooting from a bench and like a vice, which then what are you even training?
Right.
There's no difference, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like when you take like sugar pills, and they tell you that it's
placebo.
The new cancer. Yeah, it's a placebo effect. They tell you it's going to cure your cancer, and then you get a slightly little bit better because everything is kind of moving in that direction. Like that new gun feeling, guys. Come on, it's like when you used to get new sneakers as a kid, and you're like, oh, I'm going to jump so much higher in these Converse than I did in my other whatever, right? Like it's that new gun feeling. Like, you go to the range, it's just your senses are maybe a little bit more dialed in and all that. Stop doing that, Midas.
I'm trying to trigger all the safety people.
Your senses are a little bit more dialed in, so on and so forth, right? So you might be shooting a little bit, oh man, this thing is awesome. And then a week later, you're back to like, missing the mark. So yeah. But the problem is, back to the community aspect of it, that none of this matters because you can have an honest experience like Midas just had. I'm telling everyone who's listening, this is like a straight up honest guy right here. He just had this one experience with his macro that he is. Yeah, that is no more. But like if you just say something, like you can have an opinion and be slaughtered for it. And that's why we don't have a community, because if I say, look, I prefer Glocks, and the reason why I've owned every gun, but I prefer Glocks because they fit my particular hand better. I shoot them better. I just feel like I love the aspect of I can clean them, work on them, blah, blah, blah. Someone will go, look at the Glock shill. All right, yeah. Fanboy. You know what I mean? And then that's it.
And I just want to say this before I forget, because, obviously a thought that I'm having now, if I was watching this and I was like leaving a comment like, you guys fucking suck, is, obviously we here all support a freedom of speech, right? Where it's like, of course we want those, other opinions. We want you to be able to be free as long as you are not threatening to kill us or, wishing horrible harm upon us and our families. We want you to be able to express your opinion. Here is the danger of that. When you have a guy that's like, dude, let's change it up, not to offend the SIG people. Let's say there's a dude who's like, dude, it's staccato or bust, right? It's like staccatos, no matter what, everything else sucks. They'll watch someone's channel, and that, a person's channel will be like, you know what? Staccato is overpriced. This DLC finish on this one that I got wore off instantly. Then they are not going to support that person's channel. And it's like, then they're looking for the staccato channel. And because of that, they're passing up. It's like, oh, this guy thinks SIG is the best. Well, I think staccato is the best. Not going to support that channel. And pretty soon you are tossing away all of these pro 2A people that are trying to spread the word on gun ownership being a good thing, and you are just like unsubscribing to them, leaving hate behind on them. And it's like maybe other people will read those comments and be like, man, why do so many people hate this guy? There must be something wrong with him.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, we are fracturing the culture. And instead, we need to lift up pro 2A creators, even if we disagree with them. You can express your disagreement and maybe express why you disagree, and you can have a conversation and be on the same side instead of being like, dude, you're stupid and your glasses are too big and you look really dumb. You should stop making videos altogether. And it's like, okay, pretty soon we're going to have no culture left for the 2A whatsoever, because everybody is stuck in their own little my gun's best, my gun's best, my gun's best, my gun's best, or I like all guns except I don't see why anyone needs a magazine that holds more than 29 rounds.
Right,
and it's like,
right.
okay, at the end of the day, let's have a healthy discourse so that we can grow instead of slamming down pro gun, pro 2A creators that we may disagree with, because if you keep doing that, there are going to be none left.
But and not to mention, we have outside of our community, we have plenty of people trying to tear us down. You know,
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
you know, you have YouTube that we're on right now trying to tear us down. You have you know, other platforms like Insta or Facebook or whatever trying to tear us down. You have politicians left, right, and center. There, I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed the uptick, but they seem to be really going for broke these days. So
Oh, yeah.
with all that, instead of circling the wagons and like going shields up with your boys and going like, all right, boys, we're in this community together, it just seems like people are stuck in the same negative feedback loops that they've been in for the longest time that don't advance the community anyway. So you want to tell me why your SIG is so much better, but you're not giving me, you know, solid reasoning right behind it. So
Just emotional appeal.
it's just this emotional appeal. Well, why am I concerned anymore? Because I see that you're just, you know, you're stuck in that mind. Like, show me the results, right? Show me your video, right? Or show me some footage, or let me see some paper you punched, you know, at whatever yardage, just to kind of get an idea of what you're talking about. And I'll still debate you on that, because I'd probably say, yes, it's you as opposed to the gun. So,
And there's so many comments I get that where it's just like it's completely deconstructive. There's nothing. It's not a conversation starter. It's just like a hateful thing. And I don't care. I legitimately don't care. You want to do it? Go ahead. Fuel the algorithm. Get me more views. But then I've been recently, you know, like there's people I'll disagree with, but you know they'll agree with me on some things, disagree with me on some things. Like one of my most recent videos, this person commented who disagreed with me on several other videos and said, "I 100% agree with you here. You're 100% right." Right? Essentially is what he said. I'm just paraphrasing. And other times we've agreed to disagree, right? And I'm fine with that, right? I'm not going to learn as a creator, as a shooter, as an instructor, or anything if I don't get feedback. And I think we've created a world where no one wants feedback, where people just want to say their piece and be left alone. And I see this a lot of times in discussions with people, in Discord servers I'm part of, or even like actual meeting face to face. Someone wants to say their piece and not have it challenged.
Yeah.
And I think there's an idea that you have a right to that. It's like, no, if you have the right to speak, I have the right to speak about what you're speaking about. Right. And I have the right to challenge what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's the anonymous hit and run. They're, you know, a nameless, faceless person on the internet. You are a person with a face and a name who's put yourself out there, and they hit and run and say, you're wrong. You're stupid. You need to stop making videos, and you need to put that X macro in your mouth and pull the trigger and see if it works.
oof.
They'll say stuff like that, and then they'll deuce. And then you're like, hey, why do you think the X macro is so good? And they're like, because you're stupid. Bye. And then
well, and I don't even mean just on my channel. I mean, literally all the conversations with people I know, and they have this idea. It's like, oh, I just want to say my piece, and you know, that's it, and don't challenge it. I'm like, why? Right? Like it's like everyone just wants their idea to be left. Like they want their little bubble to be untouched.
Yep.
And I think people have this idea is like, oh, well, I'm not here to debate. I'm just here to just say my piece. It's like, no, the world should be about the best idea wins. Right. And it's not like a fight to the death. It's just, hey, I have an idea. You have an idea. Let's talk about it. But so often people are physically incapable of having a discussion of whose idea is the best. Let's talk about it.
They don't want to have their beliefs challenged. They want to bless us with their belief. It's like, I am acknowledging you, and because of that, you should feel special, and you're stupid, and here's my belief.
As you know, if anything that starts in the gun community with, well, as a former Marine and a current police officer or something like that, right? Like any of that even matters, you know? I mean, granted, I have a lot of respect for people who sign their name on the dotted line, every day. You know this about me, especially Midas. Like I really respect the shit out of that. But it doesn't make you right on every single topic either. And then that creates what I just said now creates yet another schism, right? Because you're going to have the people who are like emotionally invested in it. My son's a Marine, and that boy can shoot a flea off a dog's ass at 400 yards with iron. Like, all right, man. Okay, I get it. But I think that we're living in one of the worst and one of the best times for the community, because on the positive side is guys like us who don't have any kind of that, Mill Leo, whatever, right, that we're bringing to the table in our conversations at all, can actually have conversations about guns, right? You can have Jen from Armed and Styled, a female, a blonde, a small frame blonde female, right? You would never have thought a woman could exist in the gun community, right? But there she is, making valid, incredible points. And like, I don't care that I'm just bringing up the point to say, like, now a female can have like that kind of a point of view, that if she brings so much value to the table, right? Like, that's the positive side. Whereas like a guy I'll give you the best example. You may hate him. I don't care who hates him. I don't give a shit. Lucas of T-Rex Arms started a company called T-Rex Arms on eBay, selling eBay holsters. Okay. And then went from that to actually changing the laws of his state, and advocating for the Second Amendment, advocating for more training, advocating for the right to have body armor as a citizen, so on and so forth, with his platform, right? And he may not be able to ride the side of a little bird, fly in and land on your rooftop and drop into your, like, through the skylight on a rope and smoke everybody in the room. But the man has something to add to the conversation. And that's one thing I do appreciate, and how to move us forward, in the community.
I think a big issue in the community as well is let me see if I can find this video. One of my shorts, which became very controversial because people said it's unsafe or whatever. Anyways, but one of the comments that I just got today was like, let's see, where is it? Why is it that all these types of guys with these channels look like they've never spent a day in combat? And I think this is the big issue, is people also confuse fighting with shooting, right? I can fight you with my fists. I can only shoot with a gun, right? Shooting is not limited to just shooting in a tactical or combat or whatever situation you want. Like there's just the principles of shooting and how to work this thing, right? I can learn a martial art without ever throwing a punch or intending to throw a punch at a single person, right? If anyone's done martial arts, there's lots of katas and stuff that have no basis whatsoever in action. I'm not going to perform the seventh kata in a fight with people, right? It's more about showing mastery of the skills. It's maybe for a competition. It's something of that. It's discipline, right? Same with shooting. There's certain shooting things I might do, right? Like like steel targets, where you have the dueling steel where it rotates, right? And I shoot dueling with a friend or something, or I do it on my own. Where there's no practical application to that in reality. I'm never going to be like, all right, if you want to come out of here alive, you got to do dueling steel with me and you have to win. Okay. Unless we're in some weird like survival zombie island or something, it's probably not going to happen. But it's a fun skill, and it's a demonstration of your skills, and ultimately it tests you and builds fundamentals for the real deal. But there's things beyond just shooting. And I think as a community, there's this idea that like, oh, someone who has combat experience knows how to shoot. There's plenty of people in Chicago that have had combat experience. They don't know how to shoot. They've just shot people, right? It doesn't take a whole lot to shoot someone. And at the end of the day, shooting guns isn't hard. Shooting guns well is hard, right? It doesn't take a whole lot to just press that trigger down. It takes a whole lot, though, to make sure the bullet goes where we intended. So you can find lots of gangbangers in Chicago and Detroit, in New York, who shoot guns at people all the time. That doesn't make them experts in anything. So I think when the idea is that they have combat experience or they've been deployed or whatever, and it's nothing against those people, and I'm no way disrespecting people who have, but it's the people who have no experience as well in those realms and then think that experience makes someone instantly qualified on shooting, when shooting is an isolated skill, right? People shit on Lucas because like, you don't know tactics, and he never claims to. He knows shooting. And that's the thing. Like, Brett, I don't know what you teach, but I'm assuming you mostly teach shooting. I don't teach tactics a whole lot. I teach shooting because that's what I know. I might know tactics, but it's not what I teach, because there's people who teach that better than me, and I can refer
Yep.
people to that. But I can teach people how to press triggers, how to line up sights or dots, and how to get hits on target, how to do everything involved with this. But if you want to know how to clear a house or something, I might recommend you to someone else.
Yeah.
So the point is, there's a difference between those things. And something that happened recently, and I have no animosity towards anyone who's watching this from any of the Discord server that I'm referencing. I won't say what it is, but we had a conversation about slide lock reloads, right? In fact, LARP Raider Kid, who's been on the podcast before, brought up slide lock reloads. I started talking about it, and I'd actually already made this video, so it's kind of funny, just released the other day, but saying, hey, you don't really want to do a slide lock reload if you can avoid it, right? You want to try and reload before that occurs. And for some reason, I genuinely was surprised. So many people were very mad that I said that, right? And they're like, no, you should. There's plenty of reasons why you'd want to go to a slide lock reload. I'm like, might be reasons where you have to, but not where you want to. I'm not trying to make the argument here. You can go watch the video if you want to hear the argument.
Pav, not to interrupt you, just to add very, very quickly, because it's going to escape my brain. You had Mike Glover not too long ago saying, hey, dude, you should be reloading when you can, not when you absolutely have to. That's the same thing as what you just said, in other words.
And I kind of want a little bit of a tangent, to be fair.
No, but I mean, just saying, like, people are going to sit there and argue about slide lock reloads, right? But you get a guy like Glover, who is, who's worked with tier 1 assets, and he's been out there, and I do believe he brings some value to the community. Whatever you think, like, everyone has their pluses and minuses, bro. Like, I like Glover still. I like what he's trying to do. I'm not mad at him. But what I'm saying is, like, the guy that if you sit here, right, as Midas from your Control the Gun, right, and say, hey, you shouldn't be trying to do slide lock reloads, versus Glover, who's sitting there saying, hey, you need to change the mags when you can, not when you absolutely have to, which makes a lot of sense in both iterations. It's the same thing. They're just going to hop on the Mike Glover thing because, he wore camouflage and rolled with some heavy hitters. You know what I mean? And the concept yet remains exactly the same. So that's what I mean. Like, what are our guiding principles? What are our guiding principles on 2A? What are our guiding principles in shooting? That's what bonds a community together more than shiny objects. Here's your staccato, here's your Glock, here's my Glock, whatever.
It's religious. It's not fact-based. Like, nothing I espouse is because who I am, who I know, who's taught me it, whatever. It's irrelevant, right? And I think that's the issue, is people go to quality of information based on who's saying it. And there is some merit there, right? But at the same time, facts kind of present themselves, right? If I say a shooting technique works, I can demonstrate the technique and I'll show you if it works, right? Or you can try it and instantly you'll see a difference in your shooting, right? There's things I will tell shooters to do and they will instantly see a difference in their shooting. Or there's things instructors have told me to do and I've seen a difference. Or there's things instructors have told me to do and it didn't do diddly squat. Why? Because some people had a fact-based approach and some people just had something that they learned at some point in their life and they never ensured that it works, right? It's like if someone told you how to drive and they didn't demonstrate the driving and they're like, yeah, when you need to make a right turn, turn the wheel to the left. And you just believe them because they're a NASCAR driver, right?
Yeah, and
wouldn't work out for well.
The guy giving you a hard time, it's like, why do all these guys teaching you how to shoot look like they don't have combat experience? Well, first of all, what does someone who has combat experience look like? Like, the fact that you're saying that means that you don't know anything anyways. But after that, there's a difference between military combat and civilian defensive encounters, right? And, like, I think in the 2A community in the United States, if you are teaching someone how to use a handgun, it is probably for a defensive encounter using a handgun. If you're using a handgun in a defensive encounter, it's probably going to be in public in a concealed carry situation. In which case, that guy who was running an M4 in the desert, taking pot shots at muzzle flashes a couple 100 yards away, trying to move from one hill to another, is not going to know, just based on that experience, how to handle a defensive encounter in a convenience store from concealment where, a guy is shooting through the shelves at you, you know what I mean? Or a mugger in a parking lot. It's like, okay, if you're somebody who has plain clothes concealed carry experience in some sort of special operation setting, and you have shot somebody with a handgun from concealment defensively, sure, that's a completely different thing. But the vast majority of people that are like, you haven't seen combat, it's like, that doesn't matter in this kind of setting for what I'm talking about, because military combat using handguns is almost zero, is very rare.
Well, and that's the other thing is when it comes to all of that, it's how do I put this? People want someone to have like experience, and it's entirely possible you could have an instructor who's had some sort of combat experience. But once again, even if you watch, there's tons of defensive shootings where people are using the worst possible techniques and they come out on top just by pure chance and luck, right?
Yep.
Or they make one decision that's right out of everything else that they totally goes fakakta, right? So
fakakta,
right? Facts, right? You know, the whole Ben Shapiro thing, facts doesn't care about your feelings. It's true, right? In a gunfight, no one's going to care about how emotionally invested you are into your SIG. It's how well can you shoot it.
But also the rules are different. So like, yeah, you had ROEs, right, in combat. Let's talk about combat for a second. You know, you had certain ROEs. Well, sir, I have certain ROEs. I'm probably going to get sued by the family of the person who tried to kill me. You know, those are, did you have those ROEs? I mean, in some instances, sure. I mean, you have the Geneva Convention and all that, but you know, who's adhering to much of that in a total
most
chaos?
of our recent combat in the past 30, 40 years, there was no official war going on. So,
right. So what I mean is that, you know, the two scenarios are so wildly different, not just from a tactical standpoint, not also from like a combative standpoint, and where you have different weaponry, but also from the standpoint of, you know, the outcome can widely affect our lives completely differently. So, yeah, you know, none of these guys, and like you said, what does a guy who has combat look like? I don't know what that looks like. Does he have to look like DJ Shipley? Does he have to have a beard and like all these crazy, like awesome tattoos and like, and he's like Diesel and he looks like he could fucking like, you know, lift a truck over his head, you know? Is that what it is? Or is it, you know, a skinny guy like Lucas? Like, I think both, you know, every book I read on Delta Force, every single one says stuff like, you know, you would think that the hulking big guy is the guy that we would usually go for, but it's always this like unassuming dude who's like on the skinnier side and somewhere in the back who winds up making it through selection, and then the front runners are always the ones who wind up, you know, falling back. So yeah, just saying stuff like that immediately indicates to me you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, and it's that we need to break. The biggest thing I think needs to be broken into the community, because I think it ties to a lot of things, is people put an inherent value on career over skills, right? Because I had a career of doing something, right? Like a cop. Someone could be a cop for 40 years and never fire their handgun, right? They could never draw their handgun, right? Unlikely, but you know, they could but drawing your handgun doesn't really require a whole lot of, you could have your handgun out and have like, you know, a teacup grip and never have to shoot it, so it's irrelevant, right? And I'm not dismissing experience of others, but career does not make skills, right? It depends what do you do in your career. Like Brett said, if you had a job where you had concealment, you had to draw from concealment, you know, be concealed and be ready to use that firearm in crazy environments, then yeah, that might be an experience you can speak to. But you know, if you're in the military, most people in the military aren't even issued handguns to begin with, right? So that's not going to translate to the civilian. And also, when it comes to the military, like Pete was saying, ROE, rules of engagements, things like that. Also, what the engagements are, right? Unless maybe you live in a desert, are you going to be shooting from mountaintop to mountaintop? Probably not. It's probably going to be in, you know, maybe the most 100 yards, but probably more confined. You know, if maybe it's like an active shooter or something. But it's all these different situations, and I think ultimately there's tactics, like I said, but then there's just the skill of the gun. And I think people can't separate the two. It's like a magnet that's really stuck together, and people just can't break it apart because they think that tactics, you know, GWAT, Recce, Navy SEAL, Delta Force, and shooting is the same thing. But all you have to look at is the top competition shooters, and whether they had prior law enforcement experience or what, their shooting ability comes from the fact they trained with a gun, not their tactics, none of that bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, here's a thing I'm going to throw at you guys, because it's easy for us to tear apart the community, because then we actually become that other fractal of the community that's like sitting in the corner going, see, we have no community. We suck, blah, blah, blah. Right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to throw this out there. Like, how do we bring this around and change the community for the better, where, you know, people are more educated, if that's what we want to do, or just have that more community minded sense that we can actually have a conversation that doesn't end in my dick is bigger than yours.
Well,
I
first
think.
of all,
Or
go ahead.
Brett. No, you go
Okay.
ahead.
So first of all, I think it's easy to focus in on the loud negative people, right? Because it's like, especially people saying like insanely hurtful things, you know, it's like insinuating that you need to like off yourself. You know, it's like that you look at that and you're like, dude, what would make a person say that? Because it's just so disconnected from like who I am and what I would ever say. But there are a lot of people, especially on my channel, that are truly awesome, amazing, incredible people in this 2A community that like to support other 2A people, that are willing to have healthy discourse with you, that are just genuinely nice and amazing people. And those people also engage in comment. But what we're forgetting are all of the people who are quiet. This was me before I started a YouTube channel. I would watch somebody's video, maybe leave a thumbs up or a like, and then leave. And I would like, why would anybody care about my comment? You know what I mean? And I feel like that is the vast majority of people in the gun community is they are quiet. You know, it's like guns are still kind of taboo in society. So maybe they don't want to talk about it often. They have an interest in it, but they'll watch your video, maybe leave a like, maybe even not, and then move on, but they agree with you. So I think that moving forward, these people, you know, the Eagles don't flock kind of people, they're like, hey, I just want to, you know, enjoy this hobby quietly by myself and with my family. I want to be left alone because I don't really like other people. I 100% get that. That is not how we maintain our Second Amendment, and that's not how we grow, or I should say regrow, the culture of the 2A. Those people that are quiet moving on, I would strongly encourage them to get involved and just take a small step. You know what I mean? Leave a comment on every gun video that you leave. Just say, great video, with a thumbs up. Start with that. And then maybe you can start making some videos, start talking to some friends, be a Second Amendment ambassador. These quiet Eagles don't flock people, I strongly encourage, get involved in the community, even if it's a baby step, like leaving a comment on a video, because there are always going to be assholes, always, no matter where you are, what community it is, they're going to be the assholes. And then there are going to be the supportive people, but there are so many really quiet, amazing, incredible, intelligent, patriotic people in the middle that just kind of want to be left alone and mind their own business. But that's not how we preserve our culture. So
Well,
that's
I
my
think that's the reason, you know, the right or the libertarian or whatever side of the aisle you want to identify with, but that the more just I want to do my own thing, leave me alone. The reason we always lose is because we just want to be left alone, so we don't get involved. We're like, just leave me alone. You do whatever you want. But ultimately, what the other side wants to do is take your rights, restrict you, silence you, bully you, whatever. Right? They want to do something negative towards you. You just want to leave them alone, right? And ultimately, you having an opinion that's different, right? We're seeing this now with the, you know, like the kids in schools, you know, that are, you know, all this sexualized stuff. You're just like, hey, I don't want my kids seeing that. And because you're saying that, because these people identify with this weird, messed up stuff, now it's becoming oh, well, you're going against my identity. It's like, well, no, I just don't want my kids being shown like porn at 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? In some cases, yes, I am going against your identity. If it's pedophilia, I fuck you and your whole entire identity. Yes. But you have to stand up for what's right sometimes.
Oh, yeah, and definitely, and that's the thing, is I think people are so afraid to make a stand because we've created a society where having an opinion can be such a executable offense, essentially, like not like a literal execution, but like a societal execution,
Right.
where you're going to get canceled, your friends aren't going to talk to you anymore, your Facebook friends, you're going to lose all your friends on Facebook, you're going to get banned off Twitter or whatever,
lose your job,
you lose your job, all these things. People are afraid to say anything because we've created a society where you can't have opinions, right? Where it's very much you got to be in lockstep. And if you challenge someone, you're like, hey, I want the best idea to win here. It's like, oh, well, you're challenging my idea. You're challenging my authority, what have you. And then it ends up biting you in the ass. And so many people have been burned and they're like, all right, that's it. I'm saying nothing. I'm staying quiet. I'm not going to share any of my opinions or my ideas. And maybe I'll just enjoy the content I want to enjoy, but I'm never going to say anything. And ultimately, like Brett was saying, we're not going to have a community until people are willing to speak up for their rights, because every day that you stay silent and mind your own business is a day that someone else is eroding your rights, whether they're part of the gun community or not. You know, the NRA has eroded our rights for years. They have literally wrote gun legislation because everyone is like, oh, just leave me alone. I'll pay my NRA dues. That'll be it. You know, they'll do it for me. and you really have to do your
Or
own
they give
research
you
when
the
it comes
old,
to this
I'm a
stuff.
card carrying member of the NRA. What more do
God.
you want from me? Well,
Yeah.
dude,
Well, I mean,
there's a lot.
right now, the safe opinion to have where you don't lose your job, you're not ostracized, you're not a social pariah in a lot of circles, especially if you live in like a city, is like assault weapons ban. Like guns are bad. And since that's the
Okay.
safe opinion, that is what is going to spread. And if you're like, my opinion isn't safe to have and isn't safe to share, then it's going to go away because there's going to be nobody to speak for it. And I know this is common sense, but it's like, look inside yourself and ask yourself, what can I do to preserve this for the next generation? It's like, it's, like we talked about previously, when there's a mass shooter, you got to look around and say, there's nobody else. It's me. I've got to do it.
Mhm.
And then to be that person and put yourself out there and then have people in your own community trying to tear you down is like the worst thing. So at the very least, you can support the people who are willing to put their face and their name behind the ideas that you agree with.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, it's I think it's like a societal cultural shift. It's the same thing that needs to happen to America needs to happen to the gun community, meaning a unifying factor. Back in the day, I remember a time where Democrats and Republicans, they're always arguing about stuff, right? Okay, Democrats want to spend more money, and Republicans want to save more money or not spend as much. Back in the day, I'm talking about, and that was the big argument. But at the end of the day, we're all Americans. We adhere to these American principles, that are embedded in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That is what was the binding principle. Now they have fractured that, right? And even in the community, these items are all fractured. So what I want to say, my general feeling is, hey, FUDs, super duper operators, snipers, Delta SEALs, CCW moms, and regular guys like us, it's all good. It's all gravy, I watch people on a weekly basis absolutely destroy things like Game of Thrones. And now I'm going to bring this around. I promise, right? Like they destroy it. But meanwhile, what they're getting every week is a motion picture every week that is the most incredible motion picture that's ever been filmed to date. Honestly, really incredible stuff on a week-to-week basis. They gobble it up in like a couple of weekends of binge watching, right? And then before you know it, they're like, that kind of sucked, and they have nothing but bad stuff to say, right? Meanwhile, on the whole, yeah, it was pretty good, right? Or you can appreciate this aspect of it, the cinematographic aspect, or this or that. Well, you know what? Yeah, I could sit there and pick on a FUD all day long and say, dude, the Second Amendment, it's not about hunting. It's not about sport. Why do I need this AR-15? I need it to hunt tyrants or protect myself from multiple attackers coming in my home. But we can both exist and we can all be good. And it's our lack of ability to see that each other, right? Like, there's going to be a few guys out there, right? Because we are all jockeying for that slot, that position, right? But principally, we're not held together, right? If the FUD understood the Second Amendment the way we understand it, then there would be no dumb commentary. Yet, we all have to exist and we all have to listen to one another one way or the other, right? Back to the old idea that we live in this big soup. It's called America. We have to unify by having the generalities, the principalities together. It goes across the board. It goes into the idea of training over objects, shiny objects, the idea of philosophy, and our rights over, trying to prove points and stuff like that in the community. So that's what I think we're lacking. And if we brought the idea together, like you said, Brett, that we're all losing here, and we need to get on a page somehow. Then Ronald Reagan used to say, if there was an alien invasion, that would unify all Americans very quickly. And even that, there's like an alien invasion happening as far as we know right now, and they're shooting down UFOs, quote unquote. I'm doing with my hands, right? And still we're like, we can't even. I'm like, yeah, it's Project Blue Beam, and other people are like, oh no, it's aliens. Or my wife was last night. We were out to dinner with friends. She's like, oh my god, aliens are they landing? Like, what's happening out there? I'm like, it's a distraction. Relax. So no one can agree on anything, and no one can respect each other's opinions. So somewhere we have to, at some point, we have to meet in the middle.
Well, I think there's an argument to be made. Like there's two things. Do we try and bring as many people in, or do we try and be more? And I'm not talking about like limiting people from getting guns or anything, but in terms of
Gatekeeping.
gatekeeping, in terms of who we build as a community, do we be a little more choosy and be like, hey, all right, this individual, he doesn't actually believe in the Second Amendment. Let's not even interact with him. Let's just look the other way, right? Or do we try and change his mind? Like what? And this thing is like, or if they're like a communist, right? A gun owning communist, let's say, right? Ultimately, we disagree with them fundamentally. Is it possible we maybe get them to like realize why communism is evil? Perhaps. But there's an argument to be made. Okay, forget it. Let's just move on. Let's get as many people who we know we can actually build a community with and build that community. And maybe do we go look for the stragglers who have these differing ideas and try and bring them in? Or do we try and focus on building the community as quickly and best as possible instead of trying to bring people in? I'm not advocating for one thing or the other, but I think there's these two approaches of we bring in everyone, or let's be a little more selective and try and bring in the best. And maybe we'll get a little further with that faster than if we try and get everyone in and then at the same time fight for our rights.
Yeah, I think we need to focus less on gun community and focus more on Second Amendment community, because there are people who are pro-gun that are anti-Second Amendment. I mean, it's like you mentioned FUDs. FUDs are the best example of that. They're like, I like my bolt-action rifle. Nobody needs an AR-15. That is not somebody who is pro-Second Amendment.
Right.
That is somebody who is pro-gun. I think we need to focus on pro-2A, spreading the message.
Good
because
point.
that person who thinks I only need my, Smith & Wesson Model 60 for self-defense. I don't need some Glock doohickey that holds a 33-round bullet clip that disperses within 30 seconds, 5,000 rounds.
Oh my gosh.
I think that person with education would be open to accepting that. So I think that we need to focus on 2A and spreading the 2A message. What does the Second Amendment mean? Versus this is the gun community. Everybody who owns a gun is in it. It's the Second Amendment community. And everybody who's in the Second Amendment community believes in the Second Amendment. And any gun law at that point, the argument is, do we repeal the Second Amendment or not? Because it's really as simple as that. If you support a magazine capacity ban, if you support the banning of semi-automatic rifles, you are not pro-Second Amendment. And at that point, we need to talk about repealing the Second Amendment. So if we can strengthen the Second Amendment movement and make it cool to be a part of that, because it's cool to be a part of the gun community. Everyone's like, oh man, these things are so cool. I want to be a part of this. But maybe fighting for the right to have something like this is not as sexy. We need to sexify the 2A community to make it even cooler than being in just the gun community.
So you're saying we hire OnlyFans models to do Constitution porn?
That would work.
I mean, I'll tell you what though. When you have, like I mentioned, T-Rex and you had Lucas and his brother go down to that Tennessee's it was either a congressman or senator's office and talk to them about bills, and you get it all on camera and you shoot it in kind of a cool way, that kind of adds that to it, because we are all sitting here talking about this gun or that gun, and the rug is slowly being pulled out from underneath us. It's time to get like you said, make 2A sexy. I do watch a channel that I'm gonna not know the name of right now, but I'm gonna look up the videos, and it's a dude who's like a 2A attorney, and he gives his armed, yes, exactly, armed. I think I'm gonna look for it right now, like in my viewed history. But like the dude every day he's got something new, and he's informing me, like I've mentioned before, I live in New York. It's a tough place to live if you love guns like I do. Armed Scholar
in general.
Armed Scholar.
Okay, yeah, I know you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
he's fantastic.
He works with FPC, I believe.
But he does, and he keeps me up to date on what's going on in my own backyard. Like I wouldn't have a damn clue. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association does not inform me of what they're doing. No one informs me. FPC sends some stuff out. Hey, we're fighting for you in New York, but it reads like a marketing email. This guy's going in the nitty gritty. He's getting in there. He's going like, yes, we're going to make a win here. Or yes, it looks like things are changing in New York or California or wherever the bullshit is, like Illinois right now, as an example. So stuff
in
like
Mexico,
that.
There's a huge push for an assault weapons ban right now as well. And like more like 14-day waiting period. That's a whole other topic. But but
we're going to lose these battles if we don't actually pick up and fight them.
Well, and that's the thing. but ultimately, and that's the question I pose. Excuse me. Do we try and assemble the biggest army possible, or the most, quality over versus quantity, right? Because there's a lot of gun owners in the United States. Like there's, millions and hundreds of million plus gun owners. But how many, are there that are full freedom enthusiasts?
I got to tell you
Yeah.
something. If you assembled people like who, there's a lot of people out there who take their freedom for granted, their 2A freedom for granted because they live in a free
Their
state.
general freedom, I think, as well.
Generally, but like with their 2A freedom, like, I know a lot of guys from free states like your guys' states, and they're just like, yeah, I don't have that problem, so that's why I don't live in New York. Haha. But here I am right here on the front lines of that 2A battle, right? So every little win I'm dialed into, every little thing, like I'm getting a CCW this year. I never thought that would happen. We are winning. We are fighting,
Yeah.
and we have to crow about our victories. Number one, because it shows people that there's a battle actually that's happening. Number two, it demoralizes folks, like demoralizes the enemies of freedom, right? Like there's a lady at my gym. I talked to her. She's a friend of mine, hardcore leftist, hates guns, and she's like, I was telling her, yeah, but you guys are losing in New York, and the look on her face was so sullen. She looked like I just ate her lunch, or stole her candy from her baby. And we have to do that. We have to take the fight out of them because they just keep doing this for political reasons. Let's be honest. So they can keep saying, "Oh, I got guns." The people's ability to carry guns in New York taken away. Vote for me, Democrat McGee.
Well, yeah, and it's crazy if you think about it. That like the way these people, like, it's one thing to be emotionally invested in the ability to have a right, but to be emotionally invested in the ability to take someone's rights away, that's very disturbing.
They don't see it like that. What they see it like that lady sees it as is like, my politician is making me safer. And because they don't have as Brett was saying, that like 2A level of consciousness surrounding the topic. They just understand it as guns bad, less guns good, countries with no guns very good. And
Supposedly.
right, but that's another topic, but you know what I'm saying, like that's the way they look at these engagements. And when you explain to them, she had the nerve to bring up Australia to me the other day, but when you explain the facts that the only people with guns in Australia now are the criminals and they're wilding out, like the triads are battling gangs, and she's like, well, that usually wouldn't affect me. I'm like, oh really? Go to Chicago, see how much it affects you if you walk down the street. Well, that's why I don't go to Chicago. I was like, dude, you're missing the point.
They put reality in a bubble, like, oh, well, that doesn't affect me. It's just
Right.
same people who are pro-gun is like, well, they're not coming after my Mini 14 or my
Right.
M1 Garand, so why do I care?
Right.
Or my single stack 1911. So why does it matter to me?
But to your point, I guess, like what we have to do, I think, is build a core, like gatekeep that good core of people, or not even gatekeep, just like try to assemble the Avengers, so to speak, and make that cool, and build like a social media presence around the cool kids, and then they will come. If you build it, they will come, because guess what? Making 2A sexy, and it's flashy and it's sexy, and you're like, wow, oh, that's they're talking my language. I never looked at it that way. You're gonna get people on board little by little by little.
This criticism I have, which by the way, every single gun, I just want to start with that. I just have a slight criticism of a channel like Demolition Ranch that has such an enormous audience and take a lot of time, hint at it, but he doesn't take a lot of time to actually educate and talk on the 2A. He has a huge opportunity to do that, and I understand why he doesn't, and that's completely his choice. He is there for entertainment. He's there to normalize guns, and that guns can be used safely and it can be sexy. But imagine the impact that he could have if he made the 2A sexy. You know what I mean? Like, he has such an enormous audience. He could even influence people that aren't in the United States, because I'm sure that's a huge chunk of his audience. People who like guns, want to see them, but can't have them, and just kind of change the culture overall. I would love to see somebody like him with his following start just slowly dripping 2A into his content to popularize it, because I think that there are like a couple of groups that we need to target making the 2A sexy. One of them are the absolute libertarians who are like, dude, I'm gonna have a gun no matter what. It's like, I don't care if it's illegal, your laws don't affect me. It's like, okay, well, let's steer the culture into making the laws in our favor so that we don't have to act in the shadows. Because sooner or later, we're going to have microwave technology where you go out in public and then all of a sudden, boom, there's this green glowing dot on your waist because you have a gun on you. It's illegal to have a gun and you're out of here. It's just only a matter of time. So let's steer the culture towards it being legally and socially acceptable. And number two are going to be like the neighborhood moms who decided that you need a handgun for personal defense. Understand.
Is Brett dying for you too, Pete?
Yeah, he's dying for me a little
why a semi-automatic rifle is useful to somebody like them instead of just what they're seeing on the news that it's evil.
Well, and so I think, and this is kind of wraps back to all of what we've been saying with this community of these individuals that you mentioned, these varying individuals who, find guns or gravitate towards guns for one reason or another. Actually, let me say this first. So when it comes to like people like Demolition Ranch, and I'm not saying this is him, but I think there is a chance that channels like him are not pro Second Amendment, right? I think that's the other thing. And I'm not saying he isn't, but those sorts of channels that use guns as a spectacle for entertainment, if anyone could get a full auto gun, if anyone could get incendiary rounds, if anyone could get a grenade launcher, then those videos won't get the millions and millions of views they do, right? If anyone could go buy, because it doesn't actually cost anything to make a gun full auto in reality, right? Manufacturers could be making full auto guns all the time and it would cost them 30 cents more. It would cost them nothing, right?
Yep.
Most bolts are full auto rated, especially from higher end companies. They just can't make a full auto rifle, or a full auto, PDW or SMG. But if then that became norm and I could go out to, Costco and buy a full auto MP5, then why would I go watch the Demolition Ranch video when I just go do it myself? When I blow shit up myself with my incendiary 9mm rounds out of my full auto MP5 or out of my belt fed M60, right? If it wasn't restricted. So I think some of these channels, the reason they don't advocate for the Second Amendment is because if the Second Amendment was realized in full actuality in modern days, their channels would become obsolete because they're not selling ideas, they're not selling information, they're selling entertainment based upon an exclusivity of the fact that they have an FFL or they know someone who has an FFL and they can get a hold of these really cool guns.
I'm not sure if it's, a purposeful choice, but obviously it helps the channel. I highly doubt that that's why he's not doing it. I think
I'm not saying him, but I'm saying there are channels
I
like him that do it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that's definitely why we're never getting full autos back, just because of all of the big money people have invested into full autos. Someone pays 30 grand for an MP5 trigger pack, and then all of a sudden they pass legislation where you can go out and get one of those for $200. That's not good. And guess who's donating money to places like the NRA? It's the people with those huge checks that have all of the full autos. And it's like they're going to be lobbying against that. That's why the NRA isn't pushing for full autos to come back, because all of their donors have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars in full autos.
And politically, it's a stymieing discussion as well. So if I'm a politician and I say, I support full automatic weapons, not fully semi-automatic, fully automatic weapons. Oh my gosh, right now in this political environment, you would be roasted like, you'd be the talk of every single late night show. You'd be Marjorie Taylor Greene on acid and steroids. You would be, eviscerated socially, publicly, and everything.
That's not the approach. Is I support the right for people to do what they want, and I don't think the government should have any say in what you do in your life. And I think
it's way deeper than guns, dude. It's way deeper than guns.
It is way deeper than guns, but I think that encompasses it. If I propose the idea of you do what you want, your job is to regulate me, not the other way around. If I'm a politician, right? That's the way it's supposed to be. We regulate the politicians. Of course, we're too busy trying to regulate each other on what guns we own or what tactics we use, or what holster or what gear we use. Hence, the gun community that is so fed up. I'm so fed up with the gun community because, and I don't want to reach the conclusion of should we even have a gun community? Almost like should we tear it all down and start from scratch, sort of thing, because it's so full of people that they might be pro-gun, they might even be pro-Second Amendment, supposedly, but they don't act like it, right? When you're emotionally invested in controlling what other people do and in a violent and emotional way, You're not pro freedom. You're not pro liberty. You are literally going against those values. It's like a lot of the people who are on the quote unquote right side, the right, like the political right in the United States, but they speak like someone of the left, right? To me, that's like Candace Owens. I think she speaks a lot like someone of the left. I'm not a big fan of hers because of the way she speaks and the way she does things. There are a lot of ad hominem things. And so therefore, I'm like, okay, you might espouse the values of the right. You might believe in them, but you don't preach, you don't live them, right? It's like the people of those mega churches who talk about all these wonderful things, and then they have 40 prostitutes and a whole sort of thing, right? It's that same thing of these politicians, these figures, these people in the gun community who say, "Oh, I'm pro Second Amendment. I believe in all this stuff, but also I'm gonna dox you, send you death threats, say horrible things to you, and hate on you just because you like a different gun than I do." And so ultimately, you can't form a community out of something like that. And I think those sorts of people are just, they're a toxicity that either we have to educate or we have to eradicate. What's the word? Extricate. I don't know.
Extricate. Yeah,
that's
get them
the word.
out.
There we
Get
go.
'em out.
Circumcise.
Circumcised.
No, I'm gonna slightly disagree with you because I think that there are far fewer of those people than you think. Because if you think about something like your X macro video, right?
I mean, it could be 10% of people. I'm just saying that 10%.
Yeah. Okay. So you have your X macro video that's like nearing 100,000 views if it's not already there, right? So let's say you have like 100,000 people that have watched the video, and you have like 200 comments that are real shitlords like that. That is an insignificant amount. Yeah, it's loud. Yeah, I mean, if you think about 200 people standing in a room, that's insane. But if you think of 200 people in a room of 100,000 people, that's like an insignificant amount. So I think that we're moving in the right direction. I think that we are winning the culture war. We just need to get, right now, the only media platforms that we have are social media, because you're not hearing this on mainstream television, on any mainstream stuff like that. We need to defend these social platforms that we have, normalize it here so that it can be normalized in the mainstream. I don't think that those shitlords make up as significant of amount as you would think in order to address them. I think that the vast majority is good. We just need to wake up the quiet people.
Oh, and that's the thing. I don't think they're a large amount. It's just like, I don't think the majority of the United States believes the insanity of the left, even though, they dominate in the culture and stuff because of the tactics they use. And ultimately, the reason I bring up this smaller minority of people in the gun community or the political community or whatever, especially the gun community, that's what this whole episode's about. These people, because they're so vocal, they ultimately discourage other people from speaking up, because now some asshole's going to fucking, say a bunch of mean things to me. And no one really wants that, right? Yeah, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But still, no one wants an asshole fucking targeting them and putting nasty comments on everything they have or whatever, right?
Or doxing them.
Or dox them. A lot of people don't like that, right? Some people don't mind. Some people are like, I don't give a shit. I'll do whatever I want. But some people that legitimately affects them in one way or another. And, then
it bothered me, dude. It really did.
But that silences people too, where you have these people who are supposedly in our community who are hateful and spiteful and all these things. Well, these people who are silent, it's going to make them more silent. So what I'm saying is we need to, I can't think of the fucking word again.
Circumcise.
That works. we need to clean up the community, and not really just be like, hey, you know what? The response to these people now is like, okay, I guess you don't believe in the Second Amendment, right? You don't believe in liberty because you want to control people out. I'm not putting out a video on a product that I have a bad experience with out of spite with my bad experience. It's, hey, I've had this bad experience. Here's my bad experience, right? I think I definitely went a little bit more than I normally would have in terms of like the macro. Like I intended to make maybe one more video and that's it. And now I'm, my 5th video is releasing this Saturday, my final video, but only because it escalated so much, because it got so much traction.
Wait till you all see what goes down. Holy smokes.
Escalation
is, yeah.
But
you need it, but here's the thing. You needed to make those videos, I feel, as a public service announcement.
Yes. And that's the thing. It's just an informative thing. I'm not doing it at a negative thing. If SIG tomorrow proves that, hey, you know what, we fucked up, I'm sorry, here, we're gonna make it right, and we're gonna show it in some way, not just to me, right? So like Zinc Point Manufacturing has reached out to me. I'm in talks with them. They're trying to make things better from the fact that their ammo blew up in my hand. They never reached out to me, right? My video, when it was at, I think, only 60,000 views, they reached out. Now it's almost 300,000 views, right? So I don't know if they're just doing damage control. Maybe they genuinely mean it. I'll find out more as I communicate more with them, and then I'll make that update video. But I don't want my experience to be like, it's one thing if I go to a gun store or go online and order as an anonymous individual, but as I gain more notoriety, and at least one video does, now my experience is tainted ultimately, right?
Right.
And no matter
And
what
people should
experience,
know about that
yes, and
if
that's
for any reason, just for their own safety.
well, and
Honestly.
that's the thing that the me and Brett were interacting with some dude in the comment section of one of his videos, and it's like this guy's like, oh well, everyone else has these positive things. I'm like, well, yeah. If you have a relationship with a firearms manufacturer or gear company and you put out a negative video, most firearm companies will stop sending you things. And if this is your living, this is what you do for a living. This isn't just something you do for fun. I just do this for fun, right? Right now, no one sends me anything anyways. But let's say tomorrow, 5 companies started sending me stuff, and then the next day I say a negative thing about 3 of them, and those 3 stop sending me things. It wouldn't really matter because I'm just doing this for fun. But when you do this for a living, you can't afford to make a negative video that makes you destroy or burns a bridge with a company, right? Brett, I won't name names, but Brett gave me an example of an individual who made a video about a product from a company where he had an issue with it. And then the company resolved it and like, hey, look, it's fine. The company fixed it. But also I had this problem. And the company blacklisted him and made him return all the products they'd given him, right?
Yep.
That's crazy, right? Like, so they want advertising is what a lot of these companies want.
Of course they do. Of course. And that's the kind of unspoken interaction that you're getting. Like, if you get, hey, like, do us a favor here, like that's the kind of vibe. Like having been on that side of it in the community as well, like that's the kind of vibe that I was getting from places, and I would feel compelled to, like, if I wanted to put out a video on something, I would feel compelled to say like things in a, and I didn't, but I would feel compelled to say, if I had something bad to say, to kind of like sugarcoat the bad thing. Now, you might find that, and by the way, if you guys are avid YouTube watchers of channels, you will know when someone had a real issue with something, because they'll say, now in my case, when I got it, the ejector didn't quite function right perfectly, but it was resolved within a few hundred rounds, and before you knew it, meaning the ejector fucking sucks on that gun. You know what I mean? That's the way they do it, and that's
you
the
can
kind of
tell
industry
when
of this.
these people, and I don't really care because it's not like I know him. I don't give a shit. Colin Noir, right? He's had like a fuck ton of videos on the Kimber Mako, right? That no one gives a crap about, right? I don't think it's a bad gun necessarily. I've looked at it and I'm like, it looks kind of ugly, but I'm like, I'm sure it does the job. Like similar to like the Springfield Hellcat, I think is in the same category where it does nothing amazing, but it just does the job, and it's not a bad gun. It's just nothing to write home about. But he's making all these videos because, of course, I'm sure Kimber paid him or has a contract with him where he has to have so much interaction, so many views, so many comments or something. So that's why he's made like 8 videos about this thing. I don't think he really loves the Kimber Mako, right?
Yep.
I don't think anyone does. I don't think anyone at Kimber does. But point being, when you have this, you have to look at this. Like I said, going back to the beginning, if you are a gun owner and you're watching a video, look at it from a factual nature, right? And I don't blame people who think maybe Midas, control the gun, damaged his gun for clout, right? It's a legitimate thing to think about, right? Now, if you look at the series of if I instantly came off a video, I just got the X macro and instantly it's total dog shit. Look at it, the rust and all this stuff. Yeah, I would think there's some hokey shit going on. But when I make my original macro video, then a month and a half later,
you liked it,
right? I was like, this gun's great. Let's go, right? And I anticipated it would only be positive things. I do like a 2,000 round update video, and that would be it. Right. And then I, unless something popped up.
At worst, maybe you were going to be like, I don't know how much the compensator works, but fuck it. It's there. I think it's a good gun.
I never really thought about it because I liked the way the gun shot, and I wasn't even having those negative thoughts about it. I was thinking positive things about it. Right. But then the gun starts, I post on Instagram about the gun rusting. So people want some more details. I'm like, let me just make an update video about it. I make this update video, and then people start flood the naysayers and stuff flood in, and they're like, oh, you just need to clean it, right? I kind of went over this earlier in the podcast. I'm kind of repeating myself. Point being, I only made more videos and stuff, because of what was happening. But if you look at the progression, I didn't come from it trying to as a clout chaser. I didn't think any of these videos would get this many views. Oddly enough, my most viewed video now had no views for 2 months, and then randomly the algorithm said, fuck it, let's promote this video, and now it's almost at 300K. So very much people do think people are clout chasers, and sometimes they legitimately are. There's plenty of people, Brett is not in the airsoft world, but Kicking Mustang, right? A lot of people hate on him. Someone made a video about him, and then Kicking Mustang responded, and this guy freaked the fuck out because he thought he was just going to get some clout, and he never have to like deal with the consequences.
Right.
So, I think a lot of times you have clout chasers in the comments and stuff like that, and I think this can boil down to, because we're so online as well as a community. You know, in person in the gun shop, yeah, you might have the FUD saying the 3 yards, 3 seconds, 3 rounds bullshit, but no one's going to speak like they would online. And because there's no threat of someone being like, all right, you're gonna tell me to go fuck myself, all right, I'm gonna punch you in the face, right? I'm not
or just like embarrassing them in front of other people because their face and their name is out there, and you challenge them, and all of a sudden they're fucking embarrassed, as opposed to online, nameless, faceless, and there's no consequence.
Yeah, it's like if you debate someone on Reddit or whatever, and it's like, or Twitter, no one really gives a shit. But when you have a debate publicly, then that's like lib gets owned or whatever, because you literally see that interaction, and that you can't hide your emotional reaction to you're getting your ass owned in a debate. But you can online. You can edit your comment, you can retype your comment, you can delete your comments, right? But you can't delete.
Make a new account.
You can make a new account, right? You can be anonymous the entire time, especially if you don't really post anything. So this anonymity within the community, I think, is one. Like I'd say, if I had to boil it down, since we're nearing our time to wrap up, there's 3 big issues I'll say, and let's each say our own 3 issues. I think the issue is how people value things. People value career over skill, right? That you're law enforcement, not that you're a good shooter, or that you're military, not that you're a good shooter. The fact that there's so much online anonymity, and then the fact that so many people only care about what affects them. So if that gun ban doesn't affect them, or that gun ban in that state doesn't affect them, they don't care. And that even happens, obviously, with the liberals. It's like, oh, I don't care if they're shooting in Chicago. It doesn't affect me where I live. So those, I think, are the 3 biggest issues in the gun community today. Brett, what do you think are the 3 biggest issues facing the gun community?
I'd say quiet people need to show support, whether, like, if you don't want to put your face out there, support the people who do put their face and their name on the opinions that you agree with. I would say have patience, treat people with respect. Be open to, it's like, maybe I'm not seeing it from your point of view. In other words, just be a decent person, and make the Second Amendment sexy instead of just guns being sexy.
Yeah.
Right. And Pete?
I agree. Like, I think that we need binding principles to bind the entire community and the country, for the country, the United States. I mean, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. For our community, the Second Amendment should be the binding principle behind all the gun talk, period. That should be it. Like, hey, look, the guy likes his bolt actions, whatever. I like my ARs. Cool. We're all Second Amendment advocates. No one's taking this out of my hands. 2, I think the interactions, there should be a buffer between what you say or type out. There should be some time that you take to think about what you're writing, and think about, is this an emotional response? Because my ego's involved with the for lack of a better term, tackle that I'm using here, these tools, right? Or is it because I genuinely have a legitimate scientific answer to this question? Well, actually, the barrel length on this is longer, thereby I get more accuracy. Whatever. Let there be a buffer between what you say, and try to do it in a respectful way. It's hard to sometimes when people are coming at you, for sure. I understand that. And I guess 3, know what you're fighting for. There's that scene in The Patriot where they're all deciding to go out there, and they go to the church to wrangle up the guys, in the militia to fight the British. Well, there's the pastor or whatever takes his wig off and puts his hat on, and he grabs a rifle, and they say, "Oh my God, Pastor so and so, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Sometimes the shepherd needs to tend to his flock." And we need to take that attitude towards protecting what is ours in the country, and in the 2A community. So that we do have a lot at stake here. And it shouldn't just go gently, quietly into that cold, dark night. We need to fight for what is right. I'm not talking about raising arms against folks. I'm talking about fighting for it before we have to get to a point where we need to raise arms against folks.
All right. Well, I think this kind of leaves, ultimately, throughout all the rambling and ranting throughout today's video episode, there's definitely some ideas to leave upon. But guys, go into the comments, share your own ideas, right? If you've made it this far, what do you think are the issues facing the gun community, and what are the solutions? Because I think we've presented our own issues and solutions, but I'd like to hear from you guys, because I'm sure there's things that while there's 3 different people here in this call, there's a lot more people that could be in this comment section. So feel free to speak up, right? No, I'm not going to say anything negative to you, no matter what your opinion is or however much you disagree with me. Neither is Brett, neither is Pete. So this is I'm not going to say this is a safe space, but because I'm sure other people are going to show up and say their own piece as well. But say stuff, comment on my video, comment on Brett's videos, comments on Pete's videos, comment on Demo Rant, anyone's videos. But don't be afraid to speak your voice, right? Think before you speak, but also, and have thoughtful things. Don't just speak to speak, but don't be afraid to speak either. So head in the comment section, say what you'd like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't like it, share it, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time. Pete, where can people find you?
Hey, I'm at TFN15 on YouTube and TFN.15 on Instagram.
All right. And Brett, where can people find you, support you, all that good stuff?
Night with Guns on YouTube. You'll find everything you need.
All right. Well, guys, I will see you on the next episode.